So the fish are fun, I just wanted to switch it up. It's BD. Today we are talking about, well, we're doing the, shit. It's BD. Today we are doing the Getting Bigger October Q&A. There's a lot of good questions, that's why I'm cutting it early. But first, I have a Patreon if you want to support the cause. I have pre-orders up for Leviathan Wellness supplements. If you are interested in a seminal volume increase in a nitric oxide pre-workout that is effectively dosed, there's your shot. And then I sell men's health aids at Peak Male Physique. They are not needed, but they can help. Let's get into it. Alright, so Hank asked me about my tattoo last Q&A, so I'm gonna answer it now. Basically, I've always wanted a tattoo since I was like 18, 19. Problem is that I'm a fickle asshole. So, it took me a while to make sure this is what I wanted to do. First I got, other side. Fear is the mind killer. If you guys read or watched Dune, that's what that's from. Basically it was a test tattoo to make sure, one, I could handle it. Two, to see if I could actually have something permanently etched on my skin. Basically, I got it to remind myself to control my emotions and not let my emotions control me. I like Dune, I've read the books before the movie came out, so still working on the third book. It's a long one. Then, basically, I am Scottish, British, Irish, a little bit of German, and some kind of Polish Slovak mix, okay? So, to me, I only really felt comfortable getting a Celtic-inspired tattoo. Secondly, I went to Edinburgh this May. So I was able to explore that part of my ancestry more. And then that's when I knew I was like, okay, I'm okay with putting this part of my culture, my heritage, on me. So we have Celtic knots on a sword hilt. I am from a failed steel town, so don't forget your roots. Also, it's just a nice aesthetic, if you ask me. Then these are two pieces of a broken shield. Doesn't really mean anything other than the connection for below and around. And then we finally have the wolf, which is the main part. I have 3 huskies. Yes, they are a handful, but this represents my family with my wife. Always somewhat connected with wolves, not so much as like an owl, which I'm probably getting next. I am getting next. But they still have a lot of admirable qualities, like their loyalty, their cunning, and their ability to seek out opportunities that are not necessarily there. So, I felt they were worthy to get on my shoulder for those reasons, other than the fact that I already have 3 tiny ones roaming around my house. So, also, may not look like it, but I am down 10 pounds. Just those little wins, you know. I'm probably gonna try to lose another 5 to 10 pounds over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll see from there. Because, you know, once you get into winter, you don't really feel like cutting because everything's cold. Anyway. So, third time now ask, what are the top posts to read on Thunder's Place? So the problem is with these old forums is that a lot of the stuff becomes outdated, so I can't really recommend you to read it. Before filming this, I quickly looked it over, and some of the stuff is out of date. And that's not really an issue, but it's not like a knock on them, it's just like a time capsule, if you will, so you can see what they were doing in 2002, for example. Fun read was Big Girth's clamping endeavors. And then loss of tugback was a big theory that made a lot of sense on paper, but then you realize, wait, everyone can still stretch the connective tissues at the base and still see gains, so that one fell short. The clamping thing, it's all right. It's a lot of like primitive stuff before you like. So let's say it's the algebra to Getting Bigger's calculus. Okay, not saying that ours is much better, but it takes it a step further. The most interesting current form post on Thunder's Place would be Karpa's, I don't know how to pronounce it, heating methodology, and essentially that is based off the fact if you heat collagen up to about 105 to 115 degrees Celsius, it begins to melt, and then if you elongate while it's melted, it will heal in this elongated state. a lot of Thunder's Place's methodologies deal around something called plastic deformation. And that's essentially if you continuously put something in the same shape, it will eventually bend like that or grow like that. The issue is that it does not really show actual growth. It shows changes in shape. Not saying it doesn't cause growth, but the way it's explained on like the medical literature and stuff, it's different than say Davis's law and mechanostat theory, where it shows increased density, increased size, blah 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 blah. So keep that in mind, especially when you're melting it. I don't know if that's actually going to be releasing the growth factors needed to cause new collagen tissue, other than just reforming what you have. So you should keep doing it. I don't know if he posts pictures, but if he doesn't, he should. Just, stay transparent and go from there. Okay, so Curious Camera 515 says he just started the 1-3 protocol. I end the routine with length pumping at 2 sets of 10 minutes of 5 to 7 HG. I've been using cock ring afterwards for 20 minutes for soft clamping. Should I stop using the ring? Is it hurting my length gains? I don't know what you're doing for length, but that's more important than anything else you are doing right now. Look at your erection quality. If your erection quality is dropping afterwards from doing this significantly, then remove the soft clamp. Otherwise, it really won't do anything. Personally, I would just keep it all on day 1 and then leave 3 solely for length, and I guess length pumping's fine too. But that's just my opinion. You don't want to overdo it. That's a lot of PE. Getting to the point where you're seeing gains, but without the drop in erection quality associated with tissue fatigue. Okay, I'm assuming this is Twitch Knits ask, considering getting an ADS, an all-day stretcher, or the LG hanger, which is a hanger, not a stretcher, and a very expensive all-day stretcher at that. I have a few issues with LG hanger, but that's besides the point. But I believe I have the steel cord. Would it be a waste of money to get one, or can I still achieve some gains? Okay, so for those who are not aware, a steel cord is essentially when the corpus cavernosum and the corpus spongiosum have the tunica albuginea wrapping around it, right? Inside, there is a space of connective tissue between the two chambers. That can become exceedingly stiff, and that's what we call steel cord. Would it affect length gains? It can, because, it increases the stimulus needed for length. However, we got brains, big brains. So basically, what I think you need to do is a crap ton of tunica malleability. Get that thing to start breaking down. After you do like 20 to 30 minutes of tunica malleability, then you can stretch out the steel cord essentially. And based off of my understanding of connective tissues, if you stretch out that tissue enough, it'll eventually break down to the point where it is flexible all the time. It's going to take extra work, but if you're going to see length gains, you got to put in that extra time with tunica malleability. And if you're going to get LG hanger to do the rest of your length work, it'll work fine. Just got to put in the extra work. Previous Dingo 6137 ask, is the rate of success for PE affected by age? For example, is a 50-year-old necessarily slower than a younger man asking for a friend? You're a nice friend. So, on paper, there's clear differences between, like, say, a 25-year-old like me and a 50-year-old like your friend. However, there are different benefits as well. So, you, or your friend rather, would see faster erection quality improvements than, say, me, because your tissue is older than mine. Therefore, it has a better chance of increasing in performance, because, older tissues tend to have a better, or older tissues tend to be weaker as they age. So you can see faster gains just from that. Then we get into the question about the healing response. A younger man on average, heals faster because, their body's producing growth hormone. But that does not mean that you will have significantly less gains. I would say you would get 90% of the gains a younger man would at 50. So, if a younger man gains 1 inch a year, you would gain 0.9 inches a year. It's literally imperceptible. So, it wouldn't really make that big of a difference. You may need more recovery. That's probably about it. And then there's even a theory that the slower you heal, the better your gains come in, because that allows more damage to build up to cause this elongation. It's like the complete opposite of what I think, but there is studies showing that if you completely limit the Tunica albuginea's ability to heal with, I think it's anti-loxidase. So that's what keeps collagen from binding together into fibrils. You can see significant gains. A Chinese team saw significant gains when they basically did penis pumps on rats. Interesting read. Then you are not getting that chemical, period. The closest thing is Xiaflex, and again, I would not recommend doing anything crazy with an anti-collagen agent in your body. That being said, I don't see much of a difference in the gains of a 50-year-old man compared to a 25-year-old man. Now, if we want to say the guy's still in puberty, then that's where things get very, very blurry, because we don't know if their natural puberty is enhancing their growth. So, I started young. I started at 16. I am technically a fast gainer because of that. Like, I gained 1 inch in 8 months and then 1/2 inch of girth at the same time. Not saying that my puberty caused it per se, but there's a strong likelihood that since I was at the tail end of my physical development down there, that the added Western Pennsylvania guys, that the added benefit of doing it at the tail end of my puberty catapulted my gains even farther. Time will tell, and obviously we're going to need actual research studies to know if there's a difference if doing PE in a pubescent state than a fully developed state. AmDog11 asks, can you give a simple Kegel and reverse Kegel routine with sets, reps, and frequency? I went through this in my pelvic floor health video. Essentially, all you need to do is Kegel to failure 3 to 5 times a day, and then reverse Kegel at least for a minute 3 to 5 times a day to keep it balanced. It's really that simple. You don't need to go crazy. And then another thing I found very helpful recently is just massaging my taint before bed for about 2 minutes. It has not transferred to like normal boner, but sex boners with my wife are extremely veiny compared to what they were used to. It's like as if I'm wearing a cock ring during sex when I'm not, just based on how bulging these veins are. So, something you might want to try, anyone listening. But yeah, 3 to 5 times of Kegeling to failure a day, 3 to 5 times of reverse Kegels up to a minute each time. Keep yourself balanced and just go from there. The going to failure is just enough to for progressive overload. You just do what your body says. You don't want to overdo it though, because that's what can lead to pelvic floor tightness. Purely for PE says, hi BD. In your video on tunica malleability, you mentioned 95% of us will have a tunica albuginea of 2 layers. While 2.5% would have 3 or more, and the other 2.5% would only have 1. I started out below average in length, but above average in girth, and since then I've been gaining girth more quickly than I'd planned. All this makes me suspect I have 1 layer. However, I've been struggling to find out more. I have 2 questions. First, if someone has only latitudinal bands, would they be a quick gainer in length but not girth? And for someone with only longitudinal bands, vice versa? Or is there the actual orientation of the bands irrelevant? And second, where does the understanding of the variable number of layers come from? Thank you so much. We're getting into advanced PE theory, senior level of college shit. So let's answer the first one. I commented a study that shows the dissection of cadavers and going over the amount of layers of the Tunica albuginea. So this study took 28 cadaver specimens, 18 adults, 10 neonatals, which is like stillborns, I believe. And then they looked at the layers of the Tunica albuginea. 6 specimens had 3 layers, 20 specimens had 2 layers, and 2 of them had 1 longitudinal layer. Now, I'm going to be honest, my understanding of latitudes and longitudes aren't great. I don't read maps. As much as I love playing grand strategy games, I don't understand latitude and longitude. Anyway, so if you have bands that only run along the top, or around the width of your penis, I would suspect that length gains become exceptionally easier because there is literally nothing keeping you from stretching out those bands like a slinky almost. If you have no bands around the penis but only going up the top, it's going to be real easy to blow out. So yes, just thinking about it in a physics perspective, how many bands you have and what way they go dramatically affect how easy it is for you to gain, because essentially you have to build up half the collagen than, say, someone with 2 bands. However, at the same time, your erection is probably going to be spongier. So if you see some of these monsters, like in porn, that look like they're 10 inches, but they're really like 8.5. Anyway, they literally look like sponges, and that's probably a mixture of their genetics and then their literal build of their penis, and it's literally just built to hold a bunch of blood and doesn't have anything keeping it from overexpanding, essentially. Now, if you do have 3 layers, it's not the end of the world. For one, your penis is probably super stiff, but that's why we do tunica malleability, because if you have all these different layers, they will break apart differently at different bands. So if you do semi-erect bends, for example, that'll break up the bands going around the side and the diagonals loops, essentially, because that's the stretch point is going to rip it that way. Not rip, but, cause it to fray. Stimulus, yada, yada, yada. So if you think you have a lot of bands, you want to do more tunica malleability. If you don't have any bands, then you probably don't need a lot of tunica malleability. And in your case, since you're saying you're gaining girth, I'm making sure you're not one of my clients, because he also had issues with the same thing where you would only gain girth and not length. Essentially, your girth is going to be the enemy for a bit. Anything that's going to cause that connective tissue to bow outwards is going to cause you issues gaining length. So you want to mainly focus on length until you actually see a significant increase in blown, pressed, stretched, flaccid length, I would say. And then we can slowly add in more girth work and see if it starts negatively impacting your length. Oh, but yeah, that was a good question. Hopefully it came off clear in this video, because I know I did start to ramble. All right. Upstairs OK 6514 asks, advice for hard gainers, how can we overcome it and start gaining? Best manual stretches to hit the ligaments? Well, first is between the cheeks, first and foremost for the manual. You need to troubleshoot. What is not letting you gain? Is it your, I don't want to be mean, but work ethic? If you're not putting in the time or enough time, you're not going to see gains. Then we can look at your programming. I always see guys say, I'm not gaining anything in length, but they probably did gain some form of tissue if they were putting enough stimulus to the penis. But since they did not, say, do girth work with it, then they will not be seeing length gains, because you can't push out this new connective tissue without the blood holding tissue. So if you have a very strong collagen repair response, but a very weak blood vessel healing response, or growth response, sorry Hank, then you're not going to be seeing any erect gains per se. And then that could be vice versa. Let's say you have a lot of blood holding growth response, but then you have very little connective tissue response. Then you will be getting very veiny and very dense, but you won't be seeing gains, right? So we need to make sure that you're doing enough of both types, connective tissue and girth work, to stimulate gains. We already touched on work ethic. Then we need to make sure that you do not just have piss poor erection quality. If you're not a healthy individual to begin with, start doing cardio. Okay, that's the best thing for erection quality. So you need to look at your routine, make sure it is up to snuff. That's why I have a bunch of different routines on r/gettingbigger to get you a framework to get started with. Then make sure you are getting everything you need. You need to make sure that you're doing the exercises properly. That's another big one. Let's say you use an extender, but you're never pushing it into the pelvis and not causing discomfort when you're wearing it. Then you're not going to be seeing gains. Essentially, and this is basically my rule of life, is that if you're not feeling a little bit of uncomfort or discomfort when you're doing something, you're not going to grow from it. Now, I'm not saying you need to be in significant pain, but you need to know that, hey, this is not feeling good. So Googlelicious asks, we compare PE to bodybuilding. I know that rest in the gym for bodybuilding is absolutely essential given the smaller size and the difference in tissue composition at play. I'm wondering if it totally translates to PE. Some vets say no ideal day, blah, blah, blah. Some vets say no days off is ideal. Others say that rest days are essential, so are rest days important for PE as they are in building muscle in the gym? It comes down to how much you're doing every day. If you are just stretching 20 minutes every day, you can get away with it every day. It might not be optimal, but you will see growth. Just like if you just do a set of curls every day, it may not be optimal, but you'll see growth in your biceps. When it comes down to optimization, the rule of thumb has always been every other day for girth, at least 6 days a week for length. I go by feel. If I see my erection quality dropping and I lose a bit of sensitivity, then that's when I take my days off. And sometimes I'm a busy guy, so I can't get to it every day. I probably get it about 5 days a week. Yes, rest is important, but understanding your entire regimen is far more important than just making sure you have rest days. If you're not getting enough work in on your work days, because of time constraints, you can just double the volume and still get the same growth factor response, if you will. Yeah. My throat hurts, guys. Thoughts on S2S? Is it considered high risk? But it isn't all things in PE considered high risk. And this was asked by Upstairs OK 6514. So let's use the gym analogy. Deadlifts are dangerous, but with proper form, they are relatively safe. Sure, S2S, side-to-side stretches can be safe if you do them with proper form. However, the risk of injury is much higher. If you ask me, it is like combining two movements at the same time. It would be equivalent to trying to do shoulder presses and walking. That is not very safe, right? Why would you want to do side to sides? Basically, if you do static left for 5 minutes, static right for 5 minutes, that is the equivalent of doing side to side for 10 minutes. So there's really no point in doing it. There's no reason to be adding the complexity of swinging it. And that's where most of the issues come from, because people just jerk it across like this, and rip their dick in the process. So just don't do side to sides. Any stretch should be static, okay? That's just the bottom line. There's no reason to add all this movement to your stretches. It won't make the gains come magically faster. Adorable AD9316 asks, is it possible to add 2 inches in length with BPC and PRP once a month for 1 year? First of all, BPC is still technically unproven. I've seen decent results with it, but more importantly, I think it will counteract with PRP because one, PRP is literally a nuke of all the hormones that BPC signals a release of. So you're just literally just causing an oversaturation response and probably dulling the sensitivity to these hormones if you continuously dose BPC 157. I have not dosed it since April, if I'm correct. Secondly, BPC 157 is anti-inflammatory in some properties. Therefore, the inflammation that you get from PRP from the buildup of platelets will be washed away with the anti-inflammatory effects, thus removing any benefits that you see from PRP. So if you do want to do PRP, do not do BPC at the same time, in my opinion. Second, is it possible to add 2 inches in length in 1 year with enhanced PE is essentially what you're asking? Probably not. So even if you gained... First, the stimulus response will eventually start to drop off, whether that be because you're getting used to always having healing hormones in your penis, or you get used to being able to do that much weight. You'll eventually slow down, and in a year, you'd be lucky to get 1.5 inches from PRP. And another thing is that with PRP, most places won't let you book for at least 6 weeks afterwards. My battery's about to die. For 6 weeks afterwards. So, you're not going to be able to get it once a month. I would not be rushing that much to get that many. I would not be rushing the process of PE, okay? Because you're gonna just set yourself up for disappointment. Like, I think I said that good results would be 1/4 inch a month, but again, that's probably fleeting. There's probably better ways to spend your money if you're that worried about penis size. Psychological Run 438 asks, could there be any effectiveness to slight erect bends? I've gained 0.3 in girth, but my length looks shorter. Is this common? So number 2, yes, is pretty common because it changes your perception. So if it looks wider, therefore it's going to look shorter by ratio. It doesn't mean it's smaller. In fact, there's a good chance you might have gained a little bit in length, but it's still, by your perception, it looks smaller. And then define slight. If you're talking like 20% erect bend, then no. But if you're like within the point where the tissue is sufficiently stressed, then yes, semi-erect bends are part of most of the Tunica malleability routines. Yummy U1 asks, which sensations and feelings should you have while pumping, hanging, or stretching? For pumping, it should be tight and overexpanded. It should be slightly pleasurable in my experience, but I'm a bit of a freak. For hanging, slight discomfort, slight pull, and same thing for stretching. You should feel it a little bit more on the skin than you should internally, in my experience. If you ever feel pain, stop, but it should also never feel like nothing. If you feel like nothing, then you're not getting enough stimulus, in my experience. Okay, Initial Commission 6 asks, any advice for someone who, any advice for those who have gained 1 inch or more would be appreciated. First, make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. 1 inch is a lot of more penis, especially if, like, say you're started at 6, you're at 7, you're in the big boy club. If you're hooking up, you're gonna get to a point where that amount of penis might be an issue for some women. Second of all, you already know not to rush this, but don't be tempted to do stupid shit without due diligence. And honestly, just try to figure out why you still want to do this. For me, I still do this because I have a size fetish, and honestly, I've for the most part, satisfied it. But now I do it because I want to see what's actually possible. For you, your differences are going to be different. If a girl called you small, that is not a very good reason to continue to do this, because at that point it becomes basically that her decisions, her actions are implying or still have sway over you. And rationally speaking, what some person has said about your size should have no effect on how you go about PE, because like this stuff is for you. Sure, it was motivation at the beginning, but all that's really going to do is make you spiteful and insecure about it, even when you're 8-9 inches long, because you're always afraid of not living up. I did a whole video on external motivation that's not about PE, but it applies here. Well, as soon as you let someone make that decision, or as soon as you take someone's opinion of you to heart, that's when you lose a bit of free will. I want anyone that's thinking about doing this long term to make sure they're doing this for them and not because they feel pressured either by society or by a former lover to be this way. But yeah, make sure you're doing this for you. Make sure this is what's going to... Make sure you understand the consequences of getting above, like, say, 7.5 inches. Yeah. Huge Ranger 2633 asks, are circumcised people safer from turkey neck and base tenting? Probably. So again, there's some genetic factors to it. Some people just have a natural turkey neck and they're uncircumcised. So if you do any kind of stretching, it can make your turkey neck worse if you already have one. But it is definitely a bigger issue for circumcised guys. Base tenting, again, still can happen with uncircumcised guys, but it's very uncommon. Technically can happen, but I wouldn't bet on it. Just keep an eye on it. You know it's there, you know how to treat it if it starts becoming an issue. And then you asked, is high tension extenders and air pump the ultimate duo for overall gains? Maybe. The ultimate duo for gains is what you can stick to. That's all it comes down to. I enjoy pumping, but a lot of the times I only can clamp due to time constraints, and that's fine. I sometimes hang, but a lot of the times I use an extender because I could not be sitting in a chair for an hour. So what's the most important thing is being able to stick to a routine, no matter what the programming is, as long as you have some kind of collagen stimulus and some kind of blood holding stimulus, then you'll see gains. It's basically as simple as that. Aesthetics, it's high tension extending and pumping might be the best because one, you are going to get the instant effects of girth from pumping, and then with a high tension extender you don't have to worry about skin migration as much. So if you're going that route, then sure, but again, the most important thing is finding something that you can stick to. And then to begin, PE asks, how do you feel about light, short pumping sessions on off days as trigger sessions? I know you tried it out back when you did your BPC trials, and I've seen Hank mention it before, but I don't know if you ever came to a conclusion. I still haven't come to a conclusion. I would put it in the category as it couldn't hurt, okay? I don't know if it would actually cause any more stimulus. It'd be kind of like active recovery, if we're talking about a gym analogy. So yeah, there's probably a decent benefit to it because you're getting more blood into the penis, therefore delivering more nutrients, if you want to talk about it that route, but you're also just keeping that tissue loosey-goosey. So yeah, on paper it should help. I'm far too busy to make sure I get a little session in every day, but go right at it, kid. And I think that's all of them. I apologize if I missed any. I am losing my voice. Leviathan Sups for pre-orders of my and Hank's supplements. Peak Male Physique for penis enhancement aids that are not needed but can help. And then I have a Patreon if you want to support me. Excuse me, it is time for me to go.